World Artist Experiences welcomes you this evening to experience Poland's culture and history. At the close of the presentation tonight, you will be able to ask questions, so please put your questions into the Q&A box. If they're technical questions, please put them in the chat box. Tonight is our great honor to partner with the Embassy of Poland to bring you stories of Polish women in Poland's history and culture. What a pleasure to introduce to you Katarzyna Rybka-Iwanska, a career diplomat, head of the Public and Cultural Diplomacy unit at the Embassy of Poland, and a storyteller. Katarzyna says, personally, I find the most captivating approach to narrate the story of my country through the remarkable women who have shaped it. Often, and significantly so, there are tales that remain undiscovered, at best residing in a niche. Now it's time to change that and complete the missing half of history. Welcome, Katarzyna Rybka-Iwanska, this evening. We're delighted you're here with us and look forward to these great stories.
Thank you very much, Betty. Good evening, everybody. It's a big honor and a big pleasure to be with you tonight and to share with you several stories of wonderful, outstanding Polish women who contributed not only to the history of Poland, but also to the history of the world. Please allow me to start sharing my screen so that I can use some presentation and some slides as a tool, as a help and assistance in, exactly, sharing these stories. There will be a Q&A at the end of tonight's session, so I'm just about to start sharing the stories and speak to you for now and later on with you. I will just start my timer, and here we go. So, welcome. This is a presentation about outstanding Polish women who contributed to Poland's and world's history. And as Betty said, yes, I feel that it's so fascinating to tell the story of my country through the stories of women, because throughout the ages, throughout the years, not too many people were doing it this way. And that's why doing it exactly through the history and the stories of women, her stories, female stories, women's stories, whatever phrase we use, can be interesting, can be different, and yet can be inspirational and very much motivating to break the glass ceilings, to become a trailblazer, and to influence positively the history and the contemporary times. I want to start with the biggest scientist of all times. And I need to tell you that many, many people do not imagine that actually Maria Skłodowska-Curie was Polish. Usually we know her as Marie Curie or Madame Curie, and people think, yeah, well, wasn't she French? Well, partly. I mean, through her blood, through her genes, she was Polish, but most of her achievements were done in France at the turn of the 20th century. But her history and her grand career of becoming 2 Nobel Prizes laureate, and actually some people are saying that she should have received 3 Nobel Prizes. We'll get there in a bit. Her story actually started because she had a wonderful sister, and their sisterhood is a story that I really love to share. Her sister Bronisława was a very good student, and as much as Maria was. However, at that time, we didn't have an independent country in the second half of the 19th century. I mean, throughout 19th century, we didn't have an independent country. And well, it was impossible for girls and women to actually go to university at that time of history. So these 2 girls, sisters, had a wonderful idea, a wonderful plan. Bronisława went to Paris to study at Sorbonne. And Maria at that time decided to work as a nanny and took up some more additional work so that she could earn some money for her sister's education. And then after some time, they turned the tables. Bronisława went to work. She accepted Maria at her accommodation in Paris, and Maria could start studying at the university in Paris. Without this solidarity between the sisters, most probably we wouldn't have Maria Skłodowska-Curie, the recipient of 2 Nobel Prizes from physics and chemistry. We wouldn't have the Nobel Prize laureate Maria Skłodowska-Curie without her beloved husband, Pierre Curie. They were a wonderful couple. They loved each other very, very much. It is said that they went on a honeymoon throughout France on bikes. They loved each other deeply. They fought for each other's affection and love, and they spent so many hours together in their, first of all, very spontaneous, not very well equipped lab. They worked together on major developments of the time in physics, and well, when a major achievement came in, and the Nobel Prize Committee decided to award the Nobel Prize in Physics for radioactivity to Pierre Curie, he said, whoa, no, this is not going to happen if I'm the only person who is going to receive the Nobel Prize for this. We've worked hand in hand. We share the responsibilities in the lab 50-50. And if Maria is not going to be the recipient of the Nobel Prize in physics together with me, then I'm not going to accept the prize. So the Nobel Prize Committee changed their decision, and yet, here we go. Both Pierre Curie and Maria Skłodowska-Curie received the Nobel Prize in physics. But this is how the world of science looked at that time. We see here Maria Skłodowska-Curie and many, many other male scientists. She was a trailblazer not only because she was the only female scientist actually accepted to the field of science, but she was also an immigrant. She immigrated to France from, Polish soil, from a country that didn't even have its independence at that time. And she was also very much willing to live her life on her own terms. When unfortunately Pierre Curie died in a crash, he was hit by a carriage on the street in Paris, and he died, unfortunately. She continued their research, and she made yet another and more major developments, and that time in chemistry. However, the Nobel Prize Committee didn't want to give her the Nobel Prize that she deserved. Why? Because she was living in a relationship that wasn't that much traditional at that time, with a married person, with a married man. There was another wonderful trailblazing scientist who stood in her defense, Albert Einstein. They were very, very close and good friends throughout the years. And he wrote to the Nobel Prize Committee, listen, you need to go through this, and you need to give her the Nobel Prize in chemistry, because her developments, her achievements are of utmost importance for the science in the world. So please reconsider and please accept her for who she is, because she is the major contributor to global science. And yes, this is what happened. She received the second Nobel Prize. But it didn't stop there with the Nobel Prizes in the Curie family. This is Irene Curie, the daughter of Pierre and Maria Skłodowska-Curie, who received, yes, a Nobel Prize later on together with her husband. So there are 3 Nobel Prizes in that, 4 actually, if we count Pierre's and Maria Skłodowska-Curie's Nobel Prizes as 2 Nobel Prizes. And there was also a second daughter, Eve Curie, or Eva Curie, who was always laughing, I'm the only one in this family who doesn't have a Nobel Prize. Maybe she didn't receive a Nobel Prize. She chose to be a writer and a journalist, and she wrote a wonderful biography of Madame Curie, of Maria Curie. This is the Polish version, a new edition published last year, but I checked it. It's available in English also on Amazon. This is the best biography of Maria Skłodowska-Curie, written by Eve Curie. So if you ever have a chance, please go to Amazon or any other online library and bookstore. And please get to know more about Maria Skłodowska-Curie, because she is still the only scientist to receive Nobel Prize in 2 different categories. And as I said, there are some people like Tristan Larsen, one of my favorite astronomers that I had a chance to see at a kind of TED-like lecture earlier this year. And she said that for this, what you can see here in this picture, Maria Skłodowska-Curie should have received a Nobel Peace Prize, because this is the X-ray machine, mobile X-ray machine that Maria Skłodowska-Curie designed, invented during World War I. Why? Because she came to the conclusion that there are so many soldiers dying on the front lines because they didn't receive proper medical care, first aid care, that she decided to do something about it. And she invented these mobile X-ray machines. She trained tens, if not hundreds of women in pursuing X-ray analysis via these mobile machines. She built several more, like more than 20 more or 40 more machines like this. And some estimates say that she may even contribute, she might have contributed to up to 1 million saved lives during World War I. Doesn't this deserve the Nobel Peace Prize? I would say I would consider that, at least. This is another Polish heroine that I really want to share her story with you. Irena Sendler. Her story was not very well known in North America until some school children actually found out about it at the turn of the 20th century. I will get to that in a second, but I just want to tell you that she's one of the major World War II heroes, and she has never had a weapon, a gun, nothing of this kind in her hand. Why was she a heroine? She saved hundreds, if not thousands, of Jewish children from the Warsaw Ghetto. She was part of the Polish Council to the Aid of Jews that was trying to help the Jews imprisoned by the German Nazi occupiers in the Warsaw Ghetto. And she was the leader of the group responsible to smuggling Jewish children out of the ghetto. Now, the estimates vary how many children she saved and her network, how many children were saved thanks to her network. No one knows. The only thing that she was always underlying was that I saved too few. She always, like throughout her lifetime, she had this compelling thought that, like, I didn't do enough. I didn't save enough children. I didn't save enough lives. Yet her achievements in this respect inspired Yad Vashem to name her the righteous among the nations and to become the honorary citizen of Israel. So she was a nurse. She didn't hold a gun. She didn't fight on the front lines, but she saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. Now, I mentioned to you that her story was not known throughout the years in the United States. It's not a surprising thing, because after World War II, Poland was behind the Iron Curtains, and so not too many stories of Polish heroes were actually getting here. But in 1999, students at high school in Uniontown, Kansas, found out about her story and decided to do a theater play based on her story. It was titled "Life in a Jar" because she was putting the names of the children into a jar, and that's why she could, keep track of most of the children that she saved. And at some point in 2009, it became that the theater play has become a film, a full motion film with one of my favorite actresses, Anna Paquin, and I very much recommend you to find it online somewhere, CBS, maybe Hallmark, and to watch it. And you will see how brave she was. She was arrested by Gestapo. She was tortured by Gestapo, and she never revealed any single name of any Jewish child that she saved, and she has never revealed any name of her partners in crime, in a way, because that's what they were doing was a crime in the eyes of the German occupiers of Poland. She survived the war. She lived for many years in Poland. She died, I think, at the somewhere around 2007. She was one of the bravest heroes or heroines of World War II. we have Olga Boznańska here, and I will be very short here because she was one of the artists that didn't want to be associated as Impressionist. However, her works were very much into Impressionism. Now you can see here a girl with chrysanthemums, and it is said that this picture, this painting, can be hypnotizing. So please do not look at it for too long because it can really hypnotize you. However, if you find her style attractive, interesting, beautiful, please visit Kraków and please explore the National Museum in our second capital city, where you will see the largest collection of her works. An Americana thing about Olga Boznańska, she actually had wonderful exhibitions here in 1912, 1916 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where she was presenting together with Auguste Renoir and Claude Monet and yes, exactly, French Impressionists. She was representing France at that time because, again, we didn't have an independent country between 1795 and 1918. But have a look. She's a painter of silence, as we call it in Polish, and we just love her pictures and paintings. Go to Krakow and see them. I guess that you may know Wisława Szymborska. She's a Nobel Prize laureate in literature. She was our beloved poet, a very celebrated poet of Poland, and her poems, her works are available in English. And she has been, at some point, she was actually the most popular non-American poet in the United States. These are two books with her poems. If you write me, I will leave you some contact details at the end of the presentation. I'm sure we can provide you with some of her works. Now, she, as you can see, she was the recipient of the Nobel Prize in Literature, and she used to live in Kraków, where another Nobel Prize in Literature laureate of Poland lives, Czesław Miłosz, and no one actually knows whether they were friends or they were kind of rivals. We like to say that they were, you know, beloved friends, and they were just teasing each other, and that's probably mostly true because they both had a wonderful sense of humor. Now, Wisława Szymborska was a major inspiration behind one of my favorite jazz albums recorded by Tomasz Stańko, one of my favorite jazz musicians who was playing on trumpet. If you are from New York City, I'm sure you know about Tomasz Stańko because he shared his life between Poland and the United States, and in particular New York City when he was a major jazz star. He recorded a wonderful album inspired by the poetry of Wisława Szymborska. And you can find it online. So I very much recommend it to you. And I want to assure you that if you stay in touch with us, you will in the future have many occasions to remain or become again inspired by Wisława Szymborska and jazz. Last July, we co-organized and co-sponsored an event titled exactly Inspired by Szymborska, with wonderful live jazz music provided at that time by Krzysztof Medyna, another talented jazz musician from from Connecticut actually, but very much active in the New York City jazz scene. So I encourage you to stay in touch with us and, well, focus and delve deep into the poetry of Wisława Szymborska. I do not have enough time tonight to recite a poem of Wisława Szymborska that I prepared for you. Maybe we'll have some more time in the Q&A. However, I very much recommend to you finding her poem titled Portrait of a Woman. This is one of my favorite ones. Another one that I would very much recommend to you would be Nothing Twice. Please Google these poems. You will find them online and, well, delve into the poetry that is very witty, very intelligent, very funny sometimes, but also very deep. That's why she received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1996. Another heroine of ours, Krystyna Chojnowska-Liskiewicz. Now, those participants of tonight's webinar who are not from Polish-speaking community or Polish-American community may find some of these names very tricky. Yes, they are tricky. Yes, they are hard to remember and pronounce. However, I very much encourage you to try and to try to pronounce Krystyna Chojnowska-Liskiewicz, who was our first lady of the oceans. She was actually the sailor who sailed as the very first woman around the world solo in 1978. Now that was a big race at that time. She started from Las Palmas in Spain, and she was, you know, like sailing. Okay, she was like trying to be the fastest because there were some other women competing at that time. And at first she was, you know, sometimes getting to the port so that she could, you know, like refresh herself, get some more food, and so on and so forth. However, when she came to the port in Cape Town, she got to know that there are two other female sailors who are just behind her back. And if she is not fast enough, she may lose the race in a way. So she decided not to get to any single port anymore, and she just sailed until the end of time, until the end of her this race. On her own without getting to any single port. And yes, she was the fastest one. Her major competitor, Naomi James from New Zealand, lost to her by 20-something days. Now, my like one particular detail that I love very much about Krystyna Hojnowska-Liskiewicz is the fact that she was married, and her husband actually designed and built the yacht that she used for this solo trip. One would say that, okay, he just wanted to stay at home, you know, like sit on the couch, watch Spartacus, or, you know, like Godfather, you name it. But it's not true. I mean, maybe he was watching these films, but at the same time, this was one of the loveliest couples ever. And I always like to underline that, you know, we as women can break ceilings, can achieve our dreams, can realize our plans, but it happens so much easier and so much more fulfilling and rewarding when we can share these joys together with our second halves. So that was also the story of Krystyna Hojnowska-Liskiewicz, the first woman in the world to sail the world solo. These are her pictures from that time exactly. Mazurek, that was her yacht during the race. Another trailblazer and one of the major inspirations that we have at the embassy, and we speak a lot at the embassy about, was Wanda Rutkiewicz. Wanda Rutkiewicz was a Himalayan mountaineer and the first, one of the first female climbers to actually go into the highest mountains of the world. She was the first woman to get to K2. She was the first woman in the world, the first European, the first Polish woman to get to Mount Everest. And one particular story about Mount Everest, she got to the summit on October 16th, 1978. That was exactly the same day when Karol Wojtyła became Pope John Paul II. They met the following year in Rome, in Vatican, and she brought him a souvenir. That was one small rock from Mount Everest. And they were always laughing. They became friends that, you know, the God wanted them, as they were saying, the God wanted them to get to the top of the world at the very same day. And that was exactly what had happened. She was a trailblazer. Why? Because at that time, as I said, not too many women were actually allowed in a way or pursuing climbing in the highest mountains in the world, in the not that high mountains also. And yet she was organizing also female-only expeditions to the highest mountains in the world. She was always saying that, you know, women can do everything and anything they want, and she was actually doing that and proving it true at every single expedition of hers. Unfortunately, she died in the Himalayan mountains at Kangchenjunga at the age of 49, and her body was never found. Yet, I need to recommend you, and I will send you a link very shortly. I keep my fingers crossed for a new initiative that is happening in Poland right now. The online museum dedicated to Wanda Rutkiewicz is just about to be launched. So you will be able to delve more delve into the story of Wanda Rutkiewicz and get to know her story, in so many details with so many pictures that the Polish Himalayan Foundation has. I very strongly recommend it to you because she is a major trailblazer, inspiration of pursuing your dreams, realizing your dreams, and your passion, no matter what. We work, as you can see, with the topic of Wanda Rutkiewicz and the celebrations of her achievements in our embassy quite frequently. So if you follow us, if you keep in touch with us, I'm sure you will have many occasions to get to know her also through our works. I very much recommend you to stay in touch with us. Now, Professor Maria Siemionow, who is very active in the United States. She comes from Poznań, and she's a transplant surgeon, one of the major surgeons in the face transplant area. She was the head surgeon and the leader of the team who conducted the first near total face transplant in the Cleveland Clinic in 2008. And she helped a woman who was a victim of a gunshot. Her husband, the victim's husband, shot her in her face, and she lost most of her face. And the team led by Professor Maria Siemionow conducted the near total face transplant as the first team in the world, and that was a breakthrough in the whole sector. Now she's active in Chicago, Illinois, and she's still pursuing many projects connecting young researchers and young surgeons from Poland and the United States. And yeah, she remains an inspiration. We were very happy to have her at our embassy, the residence of the ambassador last October, and at the reception where we had many VIPs. You can imagine, like embassy, the residence of the ambassador. And yet it was Professor Maria Siemionow who gathered the longest queue to actually get a selfie with. She's a major inspiration, and she's, again, another trailblazer and contributor to breakthrough in science, in research, and in surgery. Anna Walentynowicz. Anna Walentynowicz is, well, I may start with a question. Do you know Lech Wałęsa? And I'm sure you do. But do you know Anna Walentynowicz? I can gather some replies later, but I can imagine that not too many of you actually have heard about the story of Anna Walentynowicz. Now, to put things bluntly and very shortly, if there was no Anna Walentynowicz, there would be no Lech Wałęsa. Why? Because that was her story, or rather her situation, that inspired the whole grand strike at the shipyard in Gdańsk that started the Solidarity movement, and also inspired the Grand Solidarity Trade Union. She was fired by the bosses of the shipyard because she didn't accept them acting violently, acting unrightfully, and so on and so forth. So they fired her. She was on strike. She was fighting the mobbing, the theft at the shipyard for many years. So she was, already not very much liked by the leadership of the shipyard. At some point in 1980, they decided, okay, enough is enough. We're going to fire you, and they did. And this sparked the whole solidarity movement and the and Solidarity Trade Union that within less than a decade brought communism to its knees in Poland and inspired the whole transformation of our country and the freedom that we have right now and we can cherish. Here you can see in the middle of the picture Anna Walentynowicz together with Lech Wałęsa and many other leaders of the Solidarity movement. Here we go with Anna Walentynowicz too. One interesting fact is that she was actually coming from Ukraine. Again, I do not have enough time to delve into the details of her background, but let me just compare her for a moment with Eleanor Roosevelt. Both Anna Walentynowicz and Eleanor Roosevelt were the heroines of the big project of the Time magazine from March 2020 on the International Women's Day or month, Women's History Month, where Time magazine chose one woman for one single year throughout the centuries, 100 years, and Anna Walentynowicz was chosen for the year 1980, Solidarity year, and Eleanor Roosevelt for 1948. And the portrait of Eleanor Roosevelt was that you can see here and is also presented in the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., was painted by a Polish painter. Again, no time to delve into details of this story today, but I'm sure we'll have time at some further occasions to delve into that too. A good book to read, Solidarity's Secret, a book written by Shaina Penn, our Deputy Honorary Consul from San Francisco, and a wonderful historian who has, through this book and many other interviews and researches, contributed so much to the history of the Solidarity movement and to the history of the Polish women, that I'm very, very grateful to her. And I'm, as you can see, I was very happy to meet her last year and share this photo with her. Our last heroine, because I've already crossed in the time that I had for tonight, is Olga Tokarczuk. And yes, we have her books printed out, translated to English. I very much recommend it to you to delve into her prose. It transcends narratives. It transcends literary genres. It's like something incomparable, and that's why she received the Nobel Prize for 2018. She's different. You have never read anything like this, just, you know, like transcending very different kinds of literature. I very much recommend you to, for example, read The Flights, that I can show them to you here. But I just wanted to share you, like as a kind of a final note of this presentation, the story of Olga Tokarczuk and her dress from the ceremony of her Nobel Prize lecture. She was wearing a dress designed by a Polish female fashion designer, Gabriela Baczyńska, and inspired by Selma Lagerlöf, who was a Swedish author who received the Nobel Prize in Literature as the first woman in the world 100 years earlier. So it's just, you know, it's all connected. We are all connected. Our stories are connected. Our histories are connected. And this is what Olga Tokarczuk wanted to say. And this is also what I wanted to say to you today. And I'm very much eager to have the Q&A with you and to reply to your questions, maybe to share some further inspirations. I have many. I'm all yours. And yeah, I give it over to you, Betty. Thank you very much.
What a wonderful, inspirational presentation, Katarzyna. My goodness, we could have you continue and continue.
I'm afraid so. I can speak forever about women, but yeah, let's stop here and give our participants a chance to ask questions. Yeah.
Many of you are adding the questions in. So I'd like to ask one here for you. You spoke a lot about complementing the missing half of history with the stories of women. What is the most important part of this process?
I very much like the part of the process, or the stage of this process that we are right now in. I mean, the first stage of the process of complementing the missing half of history was actually acknowledging the fact that the world's history was not only the men's history, that women have also contributed to the breakthroughs in history. Women, you know, it happened a few times, at least, that women were kings, were monarchs, were pharaohs, right? They were, you know, contributing to this big world politics and the biggest breakthroughs in the world. But I particularly like the stage where we are right now, that is acknowledging actually not only those who contributed to the biggest political decisions of, you know, in world's history. As I showed you, for example, Irena Sendler, she was a nurse, and yet she's acknowledged and respected as one of the major heroes of World War II. So she was not fighting on the front line. She was not deciding on the borders of future countries, or future borders of countries. She was contributing to the war efforts as a nurse through saving children from the Warsaw Ghetto. And there are thousands, millions of stories of women who were doing their job, their own job, on their particular in their particular portfolios, which very often were very high from very far from big politics, and yet today we acknowledge their contributions to history too.
Great. Thank you. There, another question. You work in diplomacy. Is there any female diplomat, either Polish or not Polish, that you consider a role model for yourself?
There are quite a few, I would say. From the Polish history, I would start with Natalia Ashkenazi. She was the first Polish female diplomat. And as you can recognize from her surname, she was a Polish Jewish woman. And it has been particularly important to me because prior to working in Washington, D.C., I was posted to Israel. And she, as the first female diplomat in the history of the Polish Foreign Service, she was working in the embassy, in our embassy in Washington, D.C., so my embassy right now. And she was the press officer, so she had a similar portfolio to mine, but her time was different. She was here, the press officer in the years of 1939, 1941. So the first 2 years of World War II. And she was such a good public speaker that she went on tour around the US, where she was at major, in Chicago and many other places. She was sharing the story of what was happening in Poland under occupation and how much Poland was trying to resist the occupation and how much Poland was like in ruins because of the occupation that we were going through during these times of the war. And she was so good that after her posting was finished here, she was sent to serve at our embassy in the Soviet Union. Like a very hardship posting, yet she was also a grand diplomat over there. Now, I love this twist of history that happened because at some point, 2 years ago, thanks to a friend, I discovered that the son of Natalia Ashkenazi is luckily still alive. And I had a chance to visit him a couple of months ago, and we are good friends. He lives in the US. I will not tell you why because he's a private person. But yes, I have become friends with the son of the first Polish female diplomat. So it's on a very personal note. One of the biggest things of like highlights of my posting here. From the female diplomats, American foreign female diplomats or contributors to diplomacy, I would name two: Madeleine Albright, of course, or rather three. Madeleine Albright, big contributor to our membership in NATO. The biggest day of our modern history is actually the day when we joined NATO on March 12, 1999. I very much admire the achievement of Condoleezza Rice, and of course the achievements of Eleanor Roosevelt. And if I'm to name the fourth woman who has contributed greatly, and she was Polish-American, Helenka Pantaleoni or Adamowska. You may know her granddaughter, Tia Leoni, who is a famous American actress. And Tia Leoni has played in my favorite TV series, Madam Secretary. I very much recommend it to you. It's a fiction series about very strong female diplomats that we all need in governments throughout the world. Helenka Pantaleoni, so the grandmother of Tia Leoni, was the head of United States Committee for UNICEF for 25 years. So she contributed greatly to all the actions in the United States dedicated to saving and helping children in need. And again, I can continue, but I will stop myself here.
Someone just asked if you would repeat the title of the film you just mentioned.
So this is a TV series available on Netflix in the United States, not in Poland, unfortunately. Madam Secretary, because Tia Leoni plays a Secretary of State in that TV series. That's really one of my favorite TV series of all time. Only Friends are better.
Thank you. Now, how about Polish American women? Do you have any interesting stories about them in your repertoire?
I do. I actually, I'm working on a new project that is dedicated to not very well-known stories of Polish American women. And there are so many. For example, last week or 2 weeks ago, we went with friends to a baseball game for the very first time in our lives together with my husband. So if Margaret and Gregory you are here, I'm forever grateful for that Americana experience. So I started digging. That's always what I do. Whether there were some female baseball players in the history of the United States who had some Polish roots, and there were quite a few. My favorite is Rose Gaciok, or Gaciok. I cannot show you her picture because everything is, like copyright and so on and so forth, but at some point I will have her picture. You can Google it, and it's her story is also available online. But if you really, like dig deep into the internet, in the internet, and she was one of the major players in female baseball when the league was open in 1940s up to mid 1950s, and she started playing baseball in her late 30s, and yet she became one of the best baseball players in the female league at that time. If you recall the game, the film, The League of Their Own, the person or the character portrayed by Rosie O'Donnell is actually inspired by Rose Gaciok. And there are many other stories that I could delve into, like Barbara Slawiński, the first female pastor, Polish female pastor, and one of the first female pastors in the United States. She was a pastor in Shenandoah. Helena Modrzejewska, or Modrzewska, who is a theater icon in the second half of the 19th century. Róża Węsławska, who was one of the major suffragists in the history of the United States, and many, many more. So I hope that one day we will meet here again, and I'll be able to give a presentation about wonderful and not known stories of Polish American women.
Katarzyna, there's a question about the poetry you mentioned. If you would please give some of the titles again that you mentioned. They wanted to know that. And and someone also said, would you please share a poem? Would you please?
Okay. So first, the title of the poem that I do not have it in front of me right now, but I love it, but I don't know it by heart. Wisława Szymborska, this is the author, of course, and the title of the poem is Nothing Twice. I love it, and I'm sure you will love it too. And the second poem of hers that I actually have in my notes is Portrait of a Woman. So I will just read it for you. It's going to take only a minute, and I'm sure we still have some time for it. So, Portrait of a Woman. She must be a variety. Change so that nothing will change. It's easy, impossible, tough going, worth a shot. Her eyes are, as required, deep, blue, grey, dark merry, full of pointless tears. She sleeps with him as if she's first in line or the only one on earth. She'll bear him 4 children, no children, 1. Naive, but gives the best advice. Weak, but takes on anything. A screw loose and tough as nails. Curls up with Jasper or Ladies' Home Journal. Can't figure out this bolt and builds a bridge. Young as ever, still looking young. Holds in her hand a baby sparrow with a broken wing. Her own money for some trip far, far away. A meat cleaver, a compress, a glass of vodka. Where's she running? Isn't she exhausted? Not a bit. A little. To death. It doesn't matter. She must love him, or she's just plain stubborn. For better, for worse, for heaven's sake. So yes, that's Wisława Szymborska and her poetry that you need to admit it's very witty, in short.
Thank you. There's a question here that says, what attributes of Polish culture give rise to such heroic women?
Well, as you know, our country, as many countries in the world, I need to admit, of course, we went through a lot, and it was always the role of women to actually keep on having and cultivating the Polish identity. Because we went through so many wars. We went through lost independence for 123 years. We went through German Nazi occupation during World War II and the Soviet occupation at that same time that actually lasted for 45 years longer, because the communism was not, during the communist times, we didn't have a free country. And that has all because men were mainly fighting in all these wars. So they were not at home, or they were dying, or they were coming back, with ruined health and as everything, as we can imagine, as is happening still in many countries. And it was always the task and the mission of the women to actually keep cultivating and taking care of Polish identity, Polish language, Polish culture, Polish traditions, and everything. And we have kept this. It's not a burden, but it's like a mission and destiny and the things that we felt really responsible for on our shoulders. And this is something that we still admire in the history of our mothers, grandmothers, grandmothers, and many generations prior to them, that they were always so motivated and so passionate about bringing up their children deep into in these traditions and culture, that we have a wonderful culture to share, and wonderful heroines and heroes stories to share. And this is what our women were doing, that they were trying to teach the children the language, the traditions, the literature, and everything.
Very powerful. There's a question here that asks for if you could recommend some books about women for young teenage women or for mid-age teenage women. And if you have a powerful suggestion of a book for especially one or two.
Okay, that's a tough one. So let me start with this album. If you write us, I may share the screen with the contact details. Let's see. Oh, these are the suffragists. We Polish women got the write-in votes as early as we regained independence, and already in 1919 we had 8 MPs, female MPs. But these are our contact details to the embassy. The easiest way to contact me now is to do it via LinkedIn. I would recommend you my Twitter, but unfortunately I do not have access to my Twitter at this moment. So please, let's stick to LinkedIn. And here you have some additional ways to contact us, like the embassy channels. So you can receive this. And this is a very inspirational album that I based my presentation on, with all the stories of these fascinating Polish women that I mentioned today. And this is, if you need it, if you want it, please write us. I'll do my best for you to get this. This is the book, and it's not about Polish women, but this is the book that I'm reading right now. Let me see whether we can see it. Yeah. So my major discovery in American posting in America is our local library, where I go every single week and I borrow books. Health, Politics, and Power, written by Madeleine M. Kunin. She used to be a governor of Vermont, one of the first female governors in the history of the United States. And she used to also be the Deputy Secretary of Education and the Ambassador of the United States to Switzerland. So quite a big portfolio. And she wrote this book, fascinating one, about what women should do in order to run for office, or to get through the glass ceilings in politics or business, whatever, science, whatever. And it's a fascinating book because she speaks with very experienced political leaders, female leaders in the United States, but mostly she speaks with very young politicians, because we have a new wave of female politicians in the United States and elsewhere too, who actually run for office and do it with such a huge success. This book was written like 13 years ago or so, so some people may say, oh, it's outdated. No, it's not. Pearls, Politics and Power, a very powerful book about what also, and especially in particular, young female politicians should do to run for office. For a little bit of, no, but this is also fascinating for young readers. Years ago, there was a Polish woman who married an American diplomat, Irena Wiley. She married John Wiley, a very promising at that time, and they well together, and he was ambassador to several countries, and she wrote a book about it. So if you are fascinated by diplomacy and the role of women in diplomacy, she is, as the wife of the ambassador, she had a very important role in the embassy. This is the book. Around the Globe in 20 Years, Irena Wiley. This is a very strong recommendation of mine. Now, bad news is it's not that easily available on Amazon or elsewhere, but you can read it online. Just Google it. It was posted by one of my new friends, Bovadar, who has many works of Irena Wiley, because she was a very famous artist, painter, and sculptor at her times. So Irena Wiley, Polish woman who became an American citizen after she married American ambassador. This is a very, very good book that I would recommend you to read. Now, I would say that anything that especially young girls find in the internet, in bookstores, that has the bio of Maria Skłodowska-Curie or Marie Curie, if that's easier, any book of this with her story will be the best inspiration for you to break glass ceilings and to become a trailblazer and to live your life on your own terms. Anything and everything, and in particular, the biography written by her daughter, Eve Curie.
Thank you so much. I think we have time here. There's one more comment that I would like to read. It says, "Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. My mother was from Lublin, and one of her apartments were at Marie Curie Street. I was in Lublin this summer and visited also Marie Curie Skłodowska University. Also in Warsaw, they named a street after Irena Sandler next to the Polish Jewish Museum."
Yes. Thank you so much. And yes, and in Warsaw, there is a museum dedicated to Maria Skłodowska-Curie, and it's located in the center of the city, in the building where she used to live. So again, if you go to Poland, I very much recommend you visiting Maria Skłodowska-Curie Museum in Warsaw. And since the Pauline Museum was mentioned, it's also one of the best highlights in Warsaw. So please visit Museum of the History of and Culture of the Polish Jews, Pauline.
Katarzyna, would you like to make a final comment for this evening to everyone?
Yes, I mean, with pleasure. So, this is Helena Modrzejewska, so the famous Polish theater actress who was very popular here in the United States in the 19th century. And actually her stories is an inspiration too. And my hope that at some point we'll meet again with a presentation about Polish American women, because there is so much to say and so much to share and so much to discover. I was running through the Wikipedia section a category, famous Polish Americans. And if you go there and you check all the names, like maybe 15% of the names over there will be female names. And it doesn't mean that there are no wonderful women who we should acknowledge in the history of the United States who were of Polish ancestry. It's only a matter of work and research and actually giving them a platform or their stories a platform to be shared like we do tonight. So I very strongly encourage you to build these platforms and to share the stories, even the smallest stories. Women didn't need to be suffragists, political leaders, ambassadors, whoever. They could be nurses, they could be liaisons in uprisings, they could be teachers, and they could be I don't know, working at home with children and bringing up wonderful leaders, future leaders of countries. Their stories deserve to be told, brought to the spotlight, acknowledged, popularized, respected, and everything. And I very much wish our daughters, I also have a daughter and a son, and for him, this is a wish for him too, to be brought up in the world where the stories of all the people are represented and respected and shared. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Katarzyna. This has been a wonderful, wonderful evening of stories, and you're a wonderful storyteller. It's
you.
such a wonderful possibility to partner with you at the Embassy of the Republic of Poland. And thank you so much. We look forward to another time, possibly.
Yes, there is something big in the offing, right? It's a pleasure to cooperate with your organization, and it's not the first time when we cooperate, and it's certainly not the last time when we cooperate. And I'm sure we have a bright future ahead of us. Please let us know, and please contact our embassy. I'm speaking to all our participants. I'm very grateful for your participation and your questions. Let's remain in touch, and let's meet at some other occasion, online, offline. I'll be very happy to learn your stories and to share even more stories of ours. Thank you so much.
I would like to ask Katarzyna, maybe if she would send us some of the resources she gave you tonight, and we can post them on the website for World Artist Experiences.
I'll do my best to do so. Yes, that's a very good idea.
So thank you again for sharing these great stories with us of the heroic Polish women. And thank you, audience, for being here this evening. We look forward to future World Artist Experiences. Good evening, and have a wonderful holiday weekend. We'll see you later.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Have a good night and a wonderful weekend.